The night smelled like rain and gun oil. Lightning stitched the far ridge. The town held its breath. He rode in alone, a tall man, quiet in the saddle, hat low, coat slick with dust, horse lathered from the climb. His name was Calder Reyes. People said his eyes were the color of a storm that would not break. People said his past followed him like a second shadow. People said many things. Calder did not answer talk. He tied his horse and listened to the wind run the alley. Across the street, the lanterns of the Desert Finch Saloon burned a soft amber. Piano notes drifted out the door. Laughter tried to sound brave. She stepped into that light and turned the room quiet. Elara Vale, hair dark as a river in winter, a sliver of silver at her throat. Every gaze leaned toward her without meaning to. Elara belonged to Bishop Vale by name alone. Sheriff Vale had made the town safe and mean in the same season. He had order, he had influence, he had her last name. He did not have her fire. Calder watched her cross to the bar. He kept his face still. He felt something move in his chest like a match in dry straw. The barkeep poured her a measure of rye. She did not drink. She held the glass like a decision. A ranch hand bumped her shoulder. He smiled too wide. Elara did not step back. Calder's palm brushed the butt of his revolver without thinking. Old habit. Old trouble. The ranch hand laughed. The sound was thin. Then the man saw Calder, and his grin died by inches. Calder started for the door. He told himself he did not care who she was. He told himself he was only thirsty. Rain ticked the porch rail as he entered. Boots turned. Voices lowered. Elara looked at him. The room narrowed to the length of that look. Lightning went pale across the window and made a portrait of her face. She was steady. She was tired. She was not afraid to be seen. Calder touched the brim of his hat. He took a place at the end of the bar. The barkeep poured him a shot and slid it down like a small right. No one spoke first. The piano tried a gentle tune and then stopped. Elara lifted her glass. She drank. Her throat tightened and relaxed. A small breath. Calder felt it in his own chest, as if they shared the same weather. Outside, thunder walked the street. Inside, the ranch hand tried his courage again. He set his hand near Elara's waist. He did not reach. He did not need to. Calder said one word. Friend. The ranch hand froze. He looked at Elara. He looked at Calder. His courage decided to leave by the back door. Elara turned her head, just enough to see Calder full. Her mouth softened. He saw the loneliness behind her light. He saw the way a person learns to stand alone and call it choice. He did not speak again. She did. Thank you, stranger. Not a stranger, he said. Name is Calder. Elara Vale. Her voice had desert smoke in it. She did not offer her hand. He did not expect it. They stood there in a quiet that did not feel empty. The barkeep polished a glass that was already clean. Two card players held their breath over nothing at all. Elara set her glass down. Tell me why you ride into a storm when you could wait it out. Because storms do not wait for me. He looked at the wet street. He did not look at her mouth. She smiled like she had heard the truth, wearing a coat of words. My father does not prefer strangers in his town. Sheriff Vale. Calder's tone gave the name back without warmth. You know him. Everyone knows him. She studied Calder. There was a challenge there, and a request, and something like hope. Calder did not move. He remembered the last sheriff who swore peace and sold it. He remembered firelight on a cabin wall. He remembered a small hand that did not hold his long enough. He put the memory away. Elara said, I have known storms that smile. He heard the ache under it, and the iron too. A gust pulled the door open an inch. Rain smelled clean and cold. The lanterns flickered and came back. Bishop Vale walked in with 2 deputies, boots hard, coats dark, eyes that weighed and priced. The room straightened itself. The piano found the wisdom to sleep. Elara did not move. Her father's gaze found Calder and stayed. Evening, Bishop, the barkeep said. The sheriff's tone was soft. Evening. I see a new face. We keep a tidy town. We like to know who rides in after dark. Name is Calder Reyes, Calder said. Passing through. Most men say that before trouble, the sheriff said. He stepped closer. His badge caught the light and threw it back like a small sun. Calder felt the room lean. He kept his hands open and visible. He had learned the cost of giving a man like this any reason. Elara's eyes held a question. It was simple. Are you the kind of man I think you are? Calder breathed once and let it go. I do not draw unless someone is already bleeding, Sheriff. I do not stay where I am not wanted. I will leave when the horse is ready. The sheriff studied him, then he smiled without warmth. See that you do. He turned to Elara with a father's claim. It is late. Your carriage waits. Elara did not look at him. She looked at Calder. For the first time, her gaze flickered. He knew the sign. A woman standing on an edge you cannot see. Calder took his whiskey. He did not drink it. He set it down. He said to the sheriff, Quiet nights make for good sleep. I will not trouble yours. Bishop Vale nodded as if he had taught the lesson himself. He led his deputies out. The door closed. The saloon exhaled. Voices returned in slow pieces. Elara picked up her shawl. She did not put it on. She said, You should leave before dawn. His men do not like a man they cannot place. Do you? Do I what? Place me. Not yet, she said. Her smile faltered. Then she stepped closer. Not close enough to be a sin. Close enough to be a thought. He felt the heat lift between them, a slow, low heat, not quick, not loud, a fire that had learned patience. But then she whispered, There is a hollow behind the livery, near the pepper trees. If you need a place to breathe that is not watched, go there. There is a spring under the sand. Listen for it. Do not light a match. He watched the door. He watched her hands. He heard the storm coming over the roofs. She said, I do not belong to him in the ways that matter. He said nothing. She looked at the floor, and when she looked up again, her eyes were wet but not weak. A girl deserves peace, she said. A man too. Sometimes the trail to it runs through danger. He felt that old match flare again. He did not fan it. He let the heat rest in his ribs. "Thank you for the warning," he said. She turned to go. Then her voice came back, softer. "Calder, do not show him your true face until you must." He nodded. Elara stepped into the rain. For a moment the lantern light found her hair and made a small crown. Then the dark took her. Calder's hands were steady, but his breath was not. He set a coin on the bar and left by the side door. The alley had the clean cold of new water. He could hear the spring she had promised. He could feel eyes that did not belong to the storm. If this story has warmed a quiet corner of your heart, stay close and listen. The night has more to tell. If you are still here, your heart heard something familiar. Let it lead you to the next part. The rain quit before dawn. The air still held its breath, thick with the smell of wet sage and horse sweat. Calder Reyes crouched near the hollow behind the livery where Elara had told him to go. The spring was real, a narrow trickle under the roots of pepper trees, enough to fill his canteen and wash the road from his face. He hadn't slept. He didn't trust the quiet. He'd lived too long in the kind of silence that waits for gunfire. His horse, Cinder, pawed the ground. She was restless, same as him. He ran a steady hand down her neck. "Easy, girl," he murmured. "We're ghosts till the sun says otherwise." He heard boots on gravel before he saw the boy. A thin shadow carrying a pail. The boy froze when he spotted Calder. "You lost?" the boy asked, voice shaking. "Just thirsty." "You one of the sheriff's men?" Calder shook his head. The boy relaxed a little, though his eyes still darted like rabbits. "Don't stay here too long," the boy whispered. "The sheriff's men ride early." He poured grain into the trough and hurried off, leaving the smell of damp hay and fear behind him. Calder filled his canteen again and stood listening. He could feel the town waking, shutters creaking, roosters calling, wagon wheels groaning over mud. He could feel her somewhere in that sound, too. Elara Vale, the sheriff's daughter by blood, not wife by name. He'd learned that much from a drunk barkeep before dawn. And yet she'd spoken like she was trapped all the same. He should have left. That was the smart thing. But some storms don't let you ride around them. They pull you in until you're part of the thunder. By mid-morning, he walked into the edge of town. The saloon looked harmless in daylight, curtains pulled, wood steaming under the sun. He caught the glint of a tin badge before he heard the voice. "You Reyes?" Two deputies stepped out from beside the stables, one older, with a scar that cut his cheek like lightning, the other, young, nervous, hand twitching near his holster. "Name's Calder Reyes," he said quietly. "Sheriff wants a word." "Then he can come find me." The older deputy smiled, slow and mean. "He's a busy man. You can walk, or we can drag." Calder studied them both, neither worth dying for. He raised his hands a little and nodded. "All right." They led him through the square to the jailhouse. The sheriff waited on the porch, coat clean, boots shining like sin in daylight. "Morning," Bishop Vale said. "I don't recall inviting you to stay." "I don't recall asking permission." The sheriff's smile didn't reach his eyes. "You're bold. Bold gets men buried quick around here." Then maybe I'll get a headstone faster than most. A flicker passed between them. Recognition, maybe. Two men who'd both lived by the trigger and survived it. Vale leaned forward, resting his hand on the rail. You're a gun hand. I can smell it. Where'd you last ride? Nowhere that concerns you. I think it might. The sheriff's gaze sharpened. I've got a shipment coming through Red Mesa. Dangerous country. I could use a man who rides well and asks little. Calder laughed under his breath. You offer work to every stranger you threaten? I offer opportunity to the ones I can't scare. Behind Vale's shoulder, the door of the jailhouse creaked. Elara stood there, holding a tray with a coffee pot and 2 cups. Her hair was pinned, but a lock had escaped to brush her cheek. Her eyes found Calder's, then flicked away before her father saw it. Bishop Vale didn't miss much, but he missed that. Think about it, Reyes, he said. You ride with me, you get paid. You ride against me, you get buried. Calder tipped his hat. I'll keep that in mind, Sheriff. He walked away slow, feeling her gaze on his back like sunlight through clouds. That afternoon he found the pepper trees again. She was there before him, kneeling by the spring, her skirts gathered out of the mud. She didn't turn when he spoke. Your father offered me work. I know, she said softly. He offers it to men he means to use, and then forget. He's got a shipment moving through Red Mesa. Whiskey, she said. And something else. He hides gold among the barrels. A payoff for silence. He crouched beside her. The spring whispered under their words. You shouldn't be telling me this. You shouldn't still be here. Their eyes met. There it was again. The spark, quiet but steady. Something that shouldn't have existed and yet refused to die. I don't know what it is about you, she said, but since last night, I can't breathe the same. He smiled without humor. You should forget me. I tried. Didn't take. She shook her head. Not even close. She reached into her pocket and pressed a folded paper into his hand. Take this trail map. It leads to Red Mesa by the canyon's back road. It's safer than the one my father uses. Why give it to me? Because if he's paying for blood, I want the right man to spill it. The wind carried her scent, rain, dust, and something warm beneath both. Calder's hand brushed hers as he took the paper. Neither of them moved away. The world felt still for a heartbeat. The spring murmured below them, and somewhere far off, thunder rolled again. You're risking more than you know, he said. So are you. Their faces were close now, close enough for the air between them to thicken. But she drew back first, trembling. Go, she whispered, before someone sees. He did not go, not yet. He reached out, caught her wrist gently. Elara. She turned. The fear in her eyes was not for herself. It was for him. He'll kill you if he learns you spoke to me. Calder let her hand go. I've died before, he said quietly. This time, I might deserve it. She almost smiled. Then her voice dropped to a whisper. Then at least let me be the reason it means something. The sound of hoofbeats came fast from the street. Voices shouted, deputies searching. Elara looked toward the noise. Her breath hitched. She pressed her hand to his chest once, quick, desperate. Go, please. He nodded, stepped back into the shadow of the trees. The map burned warm in his palm. Her scent clung to the wind. He turned toward the canyon. Behind him the deputies rode past, shouting his name, and above it all he thought he heard her voice, soft, breaking, calling him once before the wind took it away. If this story has touched a quiet place in you, don't turn from it yet. The trail runs deeper than either of them knows. The next part waits beneath the same storm. The desert stretched wide and empty by mid-morning. Heat shimmered over the rocks, bending the light until the horizon looked like a mirage that could swallow a man whole. Calder rode through it anyway. Cinder's hooves clattered over the dry riverbed. Wind pushed dust against his coat. He didn't mind. It was the kind of silence he trusted, honest, cruel, and clean. The map Elara had given him rested inside his vest. He'd studied it the night before, under the starlight, tracing the narrow back trail through Red Mesa Canyon. If her directions were true, the path would cut behind her father's supply line, a place where men disappeared without names. He didn't know why he still rode toward trouble. Maybe because it had her name folded between the lines. Maybe because her voice had found a place in him that didn't know peace. A vulture circled high overhead. The sound of wings brushed against the stillness like a warning. He pressed his hat lower against the sun and rode on. By dusk, he reached the canyon mouth. A jagged cut through red stone, narrow, winding, and full of echoes. Cinder snorted at the scent of smoke. He saw them before they saw him. 2 wagons parked near the rocks, a fire burning low. 4 men in the sheriff's colors, rifles slung, cards in hand. They were guarding the shipment. Whiskey barrels, stacked high and roped tight. Calder dismounted, tied Cinder to a mesquite tree, and crept closer through the shale. He moved like a shadow taught by hunger. He counted their rifles, their laughter, their carelessness. Then he heard it, the metallic click of a revolver behind him. "Easy," a voice said. "You turn around slow, stranger." Calder froze. He knew that voice. Low, female, steady. Elara. He turned. She stood 10 paces away, dressed in riding clothes, dust on her cheeks, eyes bright from the ride. A rifle hung at her side. "You shouldn't be here," he said. "Neither should you." Her breath trembled, but her aim did not. "Father sent me to oversee the shipment. He doesn't trust his men." "Then he shouldn't have trusted you either," Calder said quietly. Her lips parted, not from anger, but from something else. Regret, fear, longing. "I had to come. I needed to know if you'd listen." He stepped closer. The canyon wind pushed her hair across her face. She didn't flinch when he brushed it back. "You risked your life to warn me again?" "Not just that," she whispered. "I came to ask if you mean to stay." He looked past her toward the wagons, the men, the barrels of gold hidden beneath the whiskey, and then back to her. "Staying means killing," he said. "Leaving means you'll never see me again." The air between them thickened. Her eyes glistened with something raw, unguarded. "Maybe I'd rather remember you alive," she said, "than wait to find your name carved on a stone." He almost smiled. Almost. "You don't strike me as the kind of woman who remembers. You strike me as the kind who fights." She lowered the rifle. "I've been fighting all my life, Calder, just not for anything that mattered." A gunshot cracked the air. One of the guards shouted. Calder pulled her down behind a rock as bullets tore the dust around them. "Damn," he muttered. "They saw your horse," she said, catching her breath. "They think you're a raider." "Are you sure I'm not?" "Because raiders don't save the sheriff's daughter twice," she snapped. He laughed once, short and rough. "You keep calling yourself that. Maybe you shouldn't." Her eyes flared. "Then what am I?" "Something your father can't own," he said, "and that scares him to death." She stared at him for a long second, then turned and fired 2 shots over the rock, clean and fast. One guard fell, the others ducked for cover. Calder took the chance, swung around, and put down another. When the gunfire stopped, only the sound of wind filled the canyon again. Elara lowered her rifle. Her hands were shaking. Calder stood, holstering his gun. "You shoot like you've done that before. My father taught me. Said fear is only useful if it aims true." He looked at her, truly looked. The dust, the light, the pulse in her throat. And for a second, the world went still. "You shouldn't have come," he said softly. "Maybe not," she breathed. "But if I hadn't, you'd be dead. Or free." She took a step closer. "Then which am I saving you from, Calder?" He didn't answer. He reached out, his fingers brushing her jaw, her pulse beating quick beneath his touch. She closed her eyes like she'd been waiting for it since the first night. When she opened them, her voice was barely air. "If we stay here, they'll send more. Then we move." He took her hand, not out of habit, but out of need. They ran together through the canyon, their shadows long and alive under the fading sun. The storm was coming again, building behind the red mesas like an echo of everything they hadn't said. When they stopped to breathe at the ridge, she turned to him. "Whatever happens next," she whispered, "I can't go back." "Neither can I." Lightning forked over the far peaks. He looked at her, hair tangled, eyes burning. It was the kind of moment that rewrote a man's fate without asking. Calder took her face in his hands. The kiss was quiet, like 2 people finding warmth before the storm could take it. And when they finally broke apart, she whispered against his mouth, "Then let it rain." If this story has found a pulse in your chest, hold it close. The desert still has more to say. Stay with them as the storm rises. The next part rides with thunder. The first drop of rain hit the brim of Calder's hat before he heard the thunder. By the time they reached the ridge, the desert sky had torn itself open. Lightning forked behind them, silver and wild, turning every rock into a blade of light. Elara clung to the saddle as Cinder climbed higher through the slick red shale. Her hair whipped across his arm. Her breath came in soft, fast bursts. Behind them, the echo of riders cracked like gunfire. "They're coming," she said. "They were always coming." Calder spurred Cinder on. "Hold tight." The storm swallowed their words. Wind and water came together in a roar that blurred sound and thought alike. The world became motion, horse, rain, thunder, and the heartbeat of 2 souls who had no right to share the same trail. When they reached the shelter of a rock outcrop, Calder pulled the reins and swung down. Elara followed, boots slipping in the mud. He caught her before she fell, his hands firm around her waist. For a moment, neither moved. Rain slid from his hat brim onto her face. She looked up, breath trembling. "We can't stay here." "We won't," he said. though his voice had softened. He brushed the wet strands of hair from her cheek. "You hurt?" "No," she hesitated. "Only changed." Her words struck something deep in him. He turned away before she could see it. "Inside that canyon is a cave," he said. "We'll wait the storm there." They led Cinder into the narrow mouth of the cave, the horse's hooves echoing on stone. The air inside was cool, heavy with damp and smoke from old fires. Calder unsaddled her, spread his coat near the wall. Elara stood in silence, rain dripping from her sleeves, the firelight from his match painting her face in gold and shadow. He struck another match and found old wood stacked in a corner. Someone had camped here long ago. Soon the cave filled with flickering light and the low hiss of burning pine. She crouched near the fire, watching it catch. "Funny," she said. "I've lived my whole life in a house bigger than this, but I've never felt safe till now." "Maybe because nobody here wants to own you," he said. Her gaze lifted to him. "You think that's what safety is?" "It's a start." He sat across from her. For a while, neither spoke. The rain outside softened to a whisper, the thunder retreating into the distance. Elara took off her gloves, one slow pull at a time. Her fingers were pale, trembling slightly. "I used to believe my father's version of justice," she said. "That order meant peace, and control meant love." Calder's eyes met hers. "And now? Now I think peace has nothing to do with power." The flames snapped between them. He watched the light move across her face, the curve of her jaw, the steadiness beneath the fear. "You talk like a woman who's seen too much." "I talk like a woman who's finally seeing." Her words hung in the air. Then a silence fell, the kind that thickened until every breath felt like confession. She reached toward the fire, palms open to the heat. "You ever lose something that didn't belong to you, but it felt like it did?" she asked. Calder hesitated. "Once." "What was her name?" He smiled faintly. "Peace." That made her laugh. Soft, tired, beautiful. "You really don't say much, do you?" "I say what matters." She leaned back against the wall, eyes closing. "I think that's why I can't stop listening to you." The rain faded outside. The night grew quieter, the fire burning lower, the air thick with the scent of smoke and wet dust. Calder stood and walked to the mouth of the cave. Below, the valley shimmered, a silver sea of water pooled under the storm. He saw no torches, no riders. For now, they were safe. He turned back. Elara had wrapped his coat around her shoulders, watching him with a look he couldn't name. Something between wonder and sorrow. "Why didn't you leave when I told you to?" she asked. He thought for a long time before answering. "Because when a man's been running from ghosts long enough, sometimes he stops when one looks at him like he's real." She said nothing, but her hand moved slightly, an invitation he almost missed. He crossed the space between them, slow, deliberate. When his fingers touched hers, it wasn't hunger that drove it. It was the quiet shock of finding warmth in a world built on cold. She leaned into him, her forehead against his chest. Her breath came steady, matching his. Outside, the last thunder rolled away. Inside, the firelight painted their shadows together on the cave wall. Elara whispered, "You can't save me." "I'm not trying to," he said. "Maybe saving isn't what this is." "Then what is it?" "Maybe it's the part after surviving, when you start to feel again." She lifted her head, her lips inches from his. "Then let me feel," she said. The kiss came slow, careful, like both of them afraid to break something sacred. The world beyond the cave could burn, for now there was only the pulse of two hearts rediscovering what mercy felt like. When they finally pulled apart, she stayed close, her voice barely a breath. "You'll leave when morning comes." "I will. And I'll hate you for it." "I know." She smiled through the ache. "Then let's make tonight last long enough to remember. If this story has found a quiet corner in your soul, stay close. The dawn has promises and reckonings waiting in its light. The trail of their hearts continues when the storm clears." The rain stopped just before dawn. Mist rose from the canyon floor, curling like ghosts over the stone. The world smelled of smoke and wet earth and something fragile. Something that felt like peace. Calder stirred first. The fire had burned down to embers. Elara lay beside him beneath his coat, her head resting near his shoulder, her hair a tangle of night and ash. For a while he didn't move. He just watched the rise and fall of her breath. He had known nights filled with fire before, heat, want, the kind that fades with the first light. But this felt different. This was quieter, dangerous in another way. He eased away, careful not to wake her. Outside, the canyon was soft and gold with early sun. He saddled Cinder, checked his revolver, and looked once more toward the cave. Elara stirred. Her eyes opened, sleepy, unsure, then remembering. "You were going to leave without saying goodbye," she murmured. He smiled faintly. "Was trying to make it easier." "It wouldn't have been." She sat up, pulling the coat around her shoulders. The firelight caught her face, pale, lovely, streaked with ash and something fierce in her eyes. "You think leaving saves me?" she said. "I think staying kills us both." He knelt by the coals, pushing ash aside with a stick. "Your father's men will find the wagons by now. When they see the dead, they'll ride hard for this canyon." "So you run?" "I ride." "To where?" "Where the law stops asking questions." Her voice softened. "And if I asked you to take me with you?" He froze. The stick in his hand broke. "Elara?" She stood, crossing the cave floor until she was in front of him. Her fingers brushed the edge of his jaw. "Don't say no yet." He looked into her eyes, the same eyes that had stopped him cold that first night in the saloon, eyes too brave for the cage they lived in. "I can't take you from your blood," he said quietly. "It's not blood, Calder. It's a curse." The words hung heavy between them. Outside, the first light touched the canyon rim. "You think he won't follow?" Calder asked. "He already has men watching every road." "Then there's no place safe." "There's one," she said. "Old mining town called Holler's Bend, abandoned after the silver ran dry. My mother was born there before she married him. Nobody goes there now, not even him." He studied her, the certainty, the edge of hope that sounded too much like faith. "You'd risk that?" "I already have." He exhaled, long and low. "You don't even know me. I know the way you looked at me when everyone else looked away." He shook his head, half a smile breaking through. "That's not enough. It's all I've got left." He reached for her hand. It trembled, not from fear, but from choosing. For a long moment he said nothing. Then, "All right, Holler's Bend." The sound of hoofbeats echoed faintly through the canyon. Calder's head snapped up. Elara stiffened. He looked toward the ridge. 3 riders, dark shapes against the morning glare, moving fast. "Go," he said. "Mount up." They rode hard down the back trail, wind whipping dust behind them. The path cut narrow through red stone, then widened into open plain. Ahead, the horizon glowed white with sun. Behind, shouts carried on the wind, the sheriff's men closing fast. "Faster!" Elara cried. "Hold on!" They thundered across the flat until the river bend appeared, shallow, gleaming, a silver vein through the sand. Cinder plunged through the water, spray catching the light like glass. On the far bank, Calder turned in the saddle and fired twice. A rider fell, the rest scattered. Elara twisted to look back. "You hit him." "Not the one that matters," Calder said. "The sheriff? He'll follow his pride before his men." They rode another mile before slowing. Elara clung to him, breath uneven, her cheek against his back. He could feel her heartbeat through the rain-soaked fabric. Finally, he pulled up under a cluster of cottonwoods. The wind rustled their leaves like whispers. He dismounted, helped her down, and led Cinder into the shade. For a while, neither spoke. The desert stretched out in every direction, endless, silent, watching. Elara broke the quiet first. "You think we made it?" "For now." She smiled faintly. "You always talk like the sky's listening." "It usually is." She stepped closer, the distance between them no wider than breath. "You saved my life twice," she said softly. "You could have left me both times." "Maybe I should have." "Then why didn't you?" He looked at her, really looked, because the fire in her eyes burned the same as the one he'd spent years trying to kill in himself, because she made silence feel like peace instead of punishment. He didn't answer. He just reached out and touched her face, tracing the line of dust along her cheek. Her eyes closed. Her hand found his chest, resting where his heart beat slow and steady. "You said you can't stay," she whispered. "I can't." "Then promise me you'll come back." He hesitated. "Don't make me lie to you." "I won't." Her lips curved faintly. "Just make me believe it for tonight." He kissed her then, slow, certain, beneath the trees. The world around them faded, only wind, breath, and heartbeat. When they finally pulled apart, she whispered, "Whatever happens after this, I'd rather die free than live under his name." Calder nodded. "Then we ride for freedom, and pray the storm behind us runs out of bullets first." The sun climbed higher, cutting gold through the leaves. The wind shifted east, carrying dust, and somewhere in it, the echo of pursuit. If this story has stirred something quiet in your chest, keep listening. The road to Holler's Bend hides more than dust and dreams. The next part rides with the promise and the danger of freedom. The sun sank low over the plains, turning the horizon into a strip of molten gold. Calder and Elara had been riding since noon, the heat pressing down like a hand that wouldn't let go. Every hoofbeat felt like a heartbeat against the silence of the land. Cinder's flanks were dark with sweat, but she kept her pace. Elara rode close behind, her hair loose, her eyes fixed on the red hills that marked the road to Hollow's Bend. By dusk the wind changed. Calder slowed, scanning the horizon. He could smell smoke, faint but wrong. Not campfire smoke, oil and powder. He reined in. "Don't speak," he murmured. Elara stiffened in the saddle. Through the shimmering air, 3 dark specks moved along the ridge. Riders. The sheriff's men again, persistent as hunger. "Can we outrun them?" she whispered. "For a while." "And after?" He looked at her. "We don't run forever." They turned off the trail, guiding their horses into the shadow of a dry ravine. The earth there was soft, lined with tumbleweed and old bones, a good place for ghosts, or for men who planned to become them. Calder dismounted, leading Cinder under an overhang of rock. He motioned for Elara to stay low. The riders passed above, slow silhouettes against the dying light. The sound of their voices carried faintly, cruel and certain. When the echoes faded, Calder let out the breath he'd been holding. Elara touched his arm. "They'll keep coming." "I know." "Then why keep heading east?" "Because there's nowhere safer west." She stared at him, the last of the sunlight catching her eyes. "Do you ever stop moving?" "Once," he said. "What stopped you?" He hesitated. "Loss." Her voice softened. "Tell me." He shook his head. "Another life. Before the war. Before the badgers and the gun smoke. You were law once?" "For a while." He gave a hollow smile. "Until I learned that law can be bought like whiskey. And that it tastes the same when it burns." She didn't look away. "I think I've been waiting to hear that my whole life." He turned to her, surprise flickering across his face. "My father always said justice comes from the barrel of a gun," she said, "but I think maybe it comes from mercy instead." Calder studied her, this woman who had walked through fire and still looked for light. "Mercy's a dangerous thing out here," he said quietly. "Men mistake it for weakness." "And you?" "I mistake it for hope." The ravine fell silent again. A coyote called somewhere beyond the ridge, a long, lonely sound that cut through the dusk. Elara leaned closer. "How far to Hollow's Bend?" "Half a day's ride, if the trail holds." "And if it doesn't?" "Then we'll find another." She smiled, faint but real. "You make it sound simple." "Nothing out here ever is." They rode again under the moon. The land turned pale and silver, every shadow stretched thin. Elara's voice came soft through the wind. "When I was a girl, I used to watch the storms roll across the plains," she said. "I'd sit by the window and count between lightning and thunder. I told myself if I ever got free, I'd stand out in the rain and not be afraid." "You're free now," he said. "I'm learning what that means." He smiled. "It's never what people think." "What is it then?" "It's waking up every day and realizing no one owns your silence." They rode until the moon climbed high. The trail narrowed between cliffs. A stream glimmered faintly ahead, fed by runoff from the storm 2 nights ago. Calder stopped to water Cinder. Elara dismounted beside him, kneeling at the bank. The water was cold, clear, biting her skin. When she looked up, he was watching her. Not as a man watches beauty, as a man watches something that might undo him. "You shouldn't look at me like that," she whispered. "Like what?" "Like you already know how this ends." He smiled sadly. "Maybe I do. And I'd still choose the same trail." She reached for him. Their fingers met in the moonlight, small, trembling, unspoken. But the quiet between them was cut by the sound of metal snapping, a rifle bolt, then a voice. "Don't move, Reyes." They turned. Bishop Vale sat his horse on the ridge above, coat billowing, eyes cold as morning frost, flanked by 6 riders. "Run," Calder whispered. "No," Elara said. "He'll shoot you first." "Then at least one of us gets away." The sheriff's voice carried down the ravine. "I warned you, boy. You took what was mine." Elara shouted back, "I was never yours." The echo hit the cliffs and came back twice as loud. Vale raised his rifle. "You'll learn that even freedom has a price." Calder grabbed her arm, pulling her behind the rocks. The first shot cracked. Stone exploded near his head. He fired back, quick and low. Another rider fell from his horse. "Go!" he shouted, but Elara didn't move. She reached for her revolver, the one he'd taught her to aim. She fired once, then again. 2 riders fell. "Get to the horses!" "No!" she cried. "I'm not leaving you." Bullets sparked against stone. The air filled with dust and gun smoke. Calder turned, grabbed her face, his breath rough. "Do you trust me?" "With everything." "Then ride, now." She hesitated, tears streaking through the dust. "I'll find you," she said, "no matter where the trail ends." He nodded once, the kind of nod a man gives before hell opens. She mounted Cinder and rode. The moonlight caught her hair like fire as she disappeared into the canyon. Calder turned back to face the sheriff. The night swallowed the sound of horses. Only the storm's echo remained, and the promise of a reckoning long overdue. If this story has found a heartbeat in you, don't turn away now. The night has more bullets, more mercy, and the desert isn't done remembering. The next part rides on gunfire and truth. Gunfire echoed off the canyon walls like thunder trying to find its own heart. Calder crouched low behind a fallen boulder, the barrel of his revolver hot, his pulse steady as the storm that brewed years inside him. The sheriff's men fanned out along the ridge, shadows against moonlight, boots sliding over shale. Bishop Vale's voice cut through the chaos, cold, measured, righteous in its own mind. "Reyes, you think you can take what's mine and walk out breathing?" Calder's reply came flat, unshaken. "Wasn't yours to take." Another shot rang. Sparks burst inches from his face. He shifted right, drew a breath, and returned fire. One man fell. The sound of his body rolling down the rocks faded into the wind. He counted the rest. 5. One of them limped. The rhythm of boots told him that much. He remembered every lesson war had carved into him. Don't move first. Let fear move them for you. Vale's voice came again. "You think she loves you, boy? You're a moment to her, a fever she'll wake from." Calder said nothing. He'd heard the same poison in a dozen towns, spoken by men who believed power made them gods. The sheriff kept talking, filling the silence with lies meant to wound. But Calder wasn't listening for words. He was listening for footsteps. The crunch came, left side. He turned, fired once, Twice. The limp stopped moving, then quiet. Even the wind held its breath. Calder reloaded. The night smelled of rain again, faint, electric. He looked up at the sky and whispered, "If I'm dying tonight, let it be for something that breathes." Miles away, Elara rode hard through the canyon. Cinder's lungs rasped, hooves pounding through wet sand. The wind tore tears from her eyes. She wanted to keep riding, to believe he'd follow. But some part of her knew men like Calder didn't run from storms. They met them. At the canyon's edge, she pulled the reins and stopped. The moon threw her shadow long across the ground. The air trembled with distant gunfire. "Don't you dare die for me," she whispered. She turned the horse around. Fear clawed her ribs, but something stronger pushed her forward, the kind of love that wasn't soft or sweet, but born from survival, the kind of love the West never forgave. Back in the ravine, the fight was nearly done. Two of Vale's men lay still. Another crawled for his rifle. Calder shot him clean. Then it was only Vale. The sheriff stood above the trail, a dark figure against a silver sky. His rifle gleamed like judgment. "Drop it," he ordered. Calder didn't. Vale's tone sharpened. "You think this ends with her choosing you? She carries my name, my blood." "She carries nothing that's yours," Calder said. Vale fired. The bullet grazed Calder's arm, burning. He gritted his teeth, fired back. The sheriff's hat spun from his head. They both moved from cover, two men drawn by something older than law. Vale's boots slipped on the slope, but he steadied himself. He raised his gun again, only to freeze. A voice broke the silence. "Put it down, father." Elara stood at the canyon mouth, rain-soaked and shaking, a revolver in her hand. Her eyes glistened like stormlight. Vale turned, disbelief twisting into fury. "You came back?" "I came home," she said, "and this isn't home anymore." He laughed, sharp and bitter. "You think you love that drifter. He'll leave you when the dust settles." "Maybe," she said, "but he'll leave me free." The words hit him harder than the bullet that followed. Her hand trembled, but her aim was true. The shot struck his shoulder, spinning him sideways. Calder stepped forward, gun ready, but she shouted, "No!" Vale fell to one knee, clutching his wound. Blood ran between his fingers, dark as oil. He looked at her, not as a father, but as a man stripped of every excuse. "You've killed what's left of your name," he rasped. Elara lowered the gun. Her voice broke. "Then I'll make a new one." She stumbled back, tears cutting clean lines through the dust on her cheeks. Calder reached her, caught her before she fell. "It's over," he said softly. She shook her head. "It's never over. He'll hunt us till he can't draw breath. Then we keep moving," he said, "till the road runs out or we do." Behind them, Vale groaned, dragging himself toward his fallen rifle. Calder turned, leveled his gun, and fired once. The sheriff went still. The sound echoed through the canyon and was gone. Only the rain remained. Elara buried her face against Calder's chest, trembling. He held her close, his jaw tight, his eyes lost somewhere far beyond the storm. When she finally spoke, her voice was barely a whisper. "Was there another way?" "No," he said, "but I wish there had been." They stood there until dawn broke, two silhouettes against a pale, forgiving sky. The world smelled of wet earth and freedom bought with sorrow. Calder touched her cheek. "We ride at first light. Holler's Bend is waiting." She nodded. "Then that's where we start again." He kissed her forehead. A promise, a farewell, a beginning. If this story has touched a quiet place in your heart, stay close. Dawn isn't peace yet, only the breath before it. The next part rides with morning through guilt, grace, and the thin light of redemption. The dawn rose slow and silver, sliding down the canyon walls like forgiveness that wasn't sure where to land. Calder and Elara rode in silence. Behind them, the trail still smelled of gunpowder and rain. Ahead, miles of open desert and the faint promise of an old mining town that time had forgotten. The air was clean but heavy. Every hoofbeat sounded like memory. Cinder's shadow stretched long in the morning light. Neither spoke for a long while. There are moments after survival where words feel too small to hold what's left of a heart. Finally, Elara broke the silence. "Does it ever get quiet inside you?" Calder kept his eyes on the horizon. Sometimes, usually just before another storm. She watched him from the side. The scar along his jaw, the way his shoulders stayed ready even when he tried to rest. "You don't let yourself breathe, do you?" He gave a dry laugh. "Breathing's for men who've earned peace." "And you haven't?" He shook his head. "Not yet." She turned away, voice soft. "Then maybe that's what I'm riding for, the day you finally do." The sun climbed higher, burning the mist away. They followed a narrow trail that wound through the red hills and into the open plain. The land stretched out, wild and endless. No fences, no law, only wind and sky. After hours of silence, Calder spotted a shape ahead, a tangle of wooden buildings half swallowed by dust and sage, Holler's Bend. They slowed as they entered the town. The wind whistled through broken windows, carrying the ghosts of hammer blows and miners' laughter. A single water tower leaned at an angle, its paint long gone. Elara dismounted first. Her boots sank into the dust. "This was my mother's home," she said quietly. "She used to tell me about the nights here. Music, dances, stories by lantern light. Then the mines dried, and the men went mean." Calder nodded, scanning the horizon. "Looks empty enough now." "Empty's good. For a while." They led Cinder into an old barn, the roof half-caved, but dry enough to hide them from the sky. Calder checked his gun, replaced the spent rounds, then leaned against a beam. Elara walked through a shaft of light, her dress torn, hair tangled from wind and rain, yet something about her looked unbreakable. She touched one of the old wooden posts, her voice barely a whisper. "Every wall here remembers something. Maybe we can give it a better memory this time." He looked at her, really looked, and for the first time in years his chest loosened. Maybe peace wasn't something you found. Maybe it was something that found you when you stopped running from the truth. "Sit," he said softly. "You need rest." "So do you." "I'll take first watch." She smiled faintly. "You'd stay awake through the world ending." "Wouldn't be the first time." She sat anyway, folding his coat around her shoulders. Her eyes followed the dust motes drifting in the light. "You think we can really start over?" He thought for a moment. The past doesn't vanish, Elara, but sometimes it forgets to chase. That made her smile. You always know what to say when the world feels too heavy. He shook his head. I just say what I need to hear. Outside, the wind grew softer. A tumbleweed rolled across the street like a slow, lazy ghost. For the first time since the night they met, the world felt still. Elara's voice came low. When I pulled that trigger, when I shot him, I thought I'd feel free. But it doesn't feel like freedom. It never does, Calder said. Freedom's quiet. Sometimes too quiet. She looked up at him. Does it fade? He hesitated. No, but it changes shape, turns into something you can live with. He crouched beside her, the distance between them gone. Look at me, he said. She did. His eyes were steady, warm, tired, and alive. You did what you had to. You stopped the hurt before it grew any further. I still see his face when I close my eyes. Then let it fade slow. That's how healing works out here. Slow and honest. Her breath trembled. You talk like you've done this before. I've buried too many ghosts not to learn their language. A long silence followed. Outside, a hawk cried over the cliffs. Inside, time seemed to slow until the only sound left was the crackle of the wind against the wood. Elara reached for his hand. I'm not afraid anymore, she whispered. Not of him. Not of the world. He turned his hand to hold hers. What are you afraid of, then? Losing this, she said. Losing what feels real for the first time. He smiled, small but true. Then don't lose it. She leaned in, forehead against his. I won't. The sun dipped lower, painting the walls gold. Dust floated between them like tiny sparks, like firelight from another life. For a moment, they didn't look like fugitives, or lovers, or survivors. They just looked like two souls who had finally stopped running. Elara closed her eyes. If we stay here, they'll find us eventually. Maybe, he said, but not tonight. Then tonight, let's pretend the world's forgiven us. He kissed her, slow, certain, the kind of kiss that felt like a quiet promise to keep breathing. And for the first time, he believed it might be true. If this story has warmed a quiet corner of your heart, stay close. The night still carries embers of redemption. The next part rides with morning light, where healing begins and old ghosts come calling. Morning came quiet and sharp, the kind of dawn that reminded a man how close peace sits to danger. Calder woke to the smell of dust and wood smoke, the faint rhythm of wind tapping against the barn walls. Elara was already up, feeding Cinder a handful of oats from an old burlap sack. Her hair caught the sunlight that spilled through the broken roof, gold glinting off strands still tangled from sleep. He watched her for a long moment, letting the sight settle in him like a memory he didn't want to lose. She looked back and smiled. You stare like a man seeing daylight for the first time. Maybe I am, he said. They shared coffee from a tin pot, bitter and thin, but warm. For a few stolen minutes, it felt like an ordinary morning. No guns, no law, no past. But peace never stayed long in a land that thrived on revenge. A soft crunch outside broke the stillness. Footsteps. Calder rose, hand instinctively finding the revolver at his side. He motioned to Elara. Stay behind the stall door. The steps came closer, careful, measured. A shadow crossed the barn threshold. "Reyes," a voice called. "Easy now. I ain't here for a fight." Calder's grip loosened slightly. He knew that voice. Ridge Hanlon, once a deputy, once a friend. Ridge stepped into the light, hat low, a faint scar under his eye. He looked older, leaner, eyes sunken from miles of dust. "You don't look surprised to see me," Ridge said. "I ran out of surprise a long time ago," Calder replied. Ridge glanced around, seeing the saddlebags, the woman's coat. "So it's true. You and the sheriff's girl." Calder's jaw tightened. "You can stop calling her that." Ridge gave a slow nod. "He's dead, then?" "Yes. And the law'll say it was you." Calder met his gaze. "You gonna take me in?" Ridge sighed, hand brushing the badge still pinned to his chest. "I should. But truth is, I never liked the man. Never liked what he'd turned that town into." "Maybe the desert just cleaned its own house." Elara stepped forward then, calm but steady. "If you mean to arrest him, you'll have to shoot through me." Ridge's eyebrows lifted. "You sound just like your mother used to." She froze. "You knew her?" Ridge nodded. "Before Bishop married her. Sweet woman. Smart. She deserved better." Elara's eyes softened, grief and curiosity flickering together. "What happened to her?" "She tried to run once. Sheriff found her wagon halfway to the ridge. Said bandits got her. Nobody ever believed that." The words hung heavy in the air. Elara's hand trembled against the stall door. Calder reached for her wrist, grounding her. Ridge looked away, voice low. "I came to warn you. The county marshal's on his way. They'll come looking. They'll dig up the truth, or enough of it to hang you." Calder's tone stayed even. "How long do we have?" "Maybe a day, maybe less." Elara stepped forward. "Then we go now." Ridge shook his head. "Won't matter. They'll track you. You're too known." Calder asked, "Why tell us, Ridge?" "Because once you saved my life, and because I don't think God needs another ghost wandering this desert." He turned to leave, pausing at the door. "You want my advice? Don't ride east or west. Head north. There's a river cutting through the bluffs. Fast water, no trail. Follow it, cross it. After that, the world stops asking questions." He tipped his hat, eyes lingering on Elara a moment. "She's got your stubbornness," he said quietly. "Try not to let it kill you." When he was gone, the barn fell still again. Elara exhaled, the sound breaking like a sob she wouldn't let out. Calder turned her toward him, hands steady on her shoulders. "You all right?" "No," she said, voice cracking. "He killed her. My mother. He killed her, and I never knew." Calder didn't answer. He just pulled her into his chest, let her anger soak through him like rain through dry ground. Sometimes words made wounds worse. When she finally stepped back, her eyes were dry, hard, clear. "Then we ride north," she said. He nodded. "We ride north." They packed what they had, food, water, one rifle, 2 hearts running out of choices. By the time the sun hit the horizon, they were already miles from Holler's Bend, the ghost town fading behind them like a story nobody believed anymore. The road north wound through old riverbeds and twisted cottonwoods. At twilight, they stopped at a ridge that looked out over endless land. silver grass, red sky, and the thin glimmer of the river far below. Elara stood beside him, hair lifting in the wind. "I used to think revenge would feel like justice," she said. "Now it just feels quiet." Calder's voice came soft. "Quiet's what healing sounds like at first." She turned to him. "You think we can ever belong somewhere?" He looked out at the dying sun. "Maybe not to a place. Maybe just to each other." The light faded slow, wrapping the world in a hush that felt like mercy. He reached for her hand, and she didn't pull away. In the last of the light, they looked like two travelers who'd outrun their names, finding in the silence what the world had never given them, not peace, not safety, but a reason to keep going. If this story has steadied your heartbeat for a while, stay close. The last road waits at dawn, where forgiveness and love ride the same trail. The journey ends in the next part, under the river's rising light. The river came into view at sunrise, wide, fast and cold, its surface flashing gold under the newborn light. Mist rolled off the water, like breath from the earth itself. Elara and Calder reined in their horses at the edge, both silent, both spent. They had been riding through the night, the desert wind behind them, the scent of sage and smoke still clinging to their clothes. Cinder stood trembling, sides heaving, her mane wet with dew. Calder dismounted first, boots sinking into the damp sand. He knelt by the river, cupping his hands into the current, and let the cold sting bring him fully awake. Elara slid down beside him. Her face looked softer in the pale light, older in spirit, younger in hope. For a while they said nothing. There was nothing left to run from, and nothing left to prove. "This is it," Calder murmured. "If we cross, we disappear." Elara watched the water, its rush steady, endless. "And if we don't?" "Then the world finds us again." The sound of the river filled the spaces their words didn't reach. She drew a slow breath. "I don't want to keep running," she said. "Not forever. I want a place, a home that doesn't belong to anyone else." He looked at her, eyes catching the soft shimmer of light. "I don't have a home to give you, Elara." She smiled faintly. "Then we'll build one out of what's left." He wanted to tell her that homes like that don't last in a world like this. But then he saw the way she touched the water, her fingers tracing circles, her reflection smiling back, alive, unbroken. And he realized maybe that was the point. They rested beneath a line of willows as the sun rose higher. Calder cleaned his revolver out of habit, though for once there was no threat pressing down. Elara leaned against a tree, watching him. "You still carry that thing like it's part of you," she said. "It is," he replied. "I just hope someday it doesn't need to be." She smiled softly. "Maybe the river will take the weight of it." He looked at her, puzzled. "You mean throw it in?" "I mean wash it clean." He paused, then held the gun over the water. For a heartbeat, it caught the sun, all the violence, all the years, all the ghosts. Then he let it drop. The splash was small, but the silence after felt wide and holy. Elara exhaled. "That sound, that's what forgiveness feels like." He glanced at her, voice rough. "Then I hope it lasts." She smiled. "It will, if you let it." He sat beside her, the grass cool beneath them. For a while they watched the river carry the past away. "You know," she said quietly, "my mother used to tell me something when I was a girl. She said the desert remembers every love story. The broken ones, the brave ones, even the ones that never got their ending. It keeps them in the wind so they never die." He looked out over the plain where the horizon blurred into sky. "Then maybe we've just written ours into it." By afternoon they found a shallow ford upstream and crossed. The current pulled at Cinder's legs, but Calder steadied her with a calm hand. Elara held on, the cold biting through her clothes, the wind carrying her laughter for the first time in what felt like years. On the far bank, the land rose into green hills. Wildflowers scattered across the slope, the kind that only bloom where fire once burned. They dismounted, standing side by side in the sunlight. "This is good land," he said. She nodded. "Good enough to start over." He turned to her, quiet for a long moment. "You sure this is what you want? No more running, no more revenge, just living?" She took his hand. "I don't want a legend, Calder. I just want a life." He smiled then, a small, honest thing that reached his eyes. "You got one. Right here." She leaned into him, her head resting against his chest. The wind brushed through the grass, the river whispered behind them, and for the first time there was nothing left to fear. That night they built a small fire under the stars. No walls, no roofs, just sky and warmth. Elara lay beside him, tracing patterns in the dirt with her fingers. "Do you think they'll talk about us?" she asked. "Probably," he said. "Stories like this don't stay buried." "Then what do you want them to say?" He thought for a moment, then answered softly, "That once, in a land that forgot how to forgive, two people remembered how." The flames flickered low, painting her eyes in gold. She reached for his hand and whispered, "That's enough." The night deepened around them. The wind carried no pursuit, only peace. And somewhere beyond the hills, the desert held their story, not as a tale of blood or vengeance, but as a quiet song of love that learned to outlive its wounds. If this story has touched a tender place in your heart, let your light stay with us. Share it, speak it, so this western fire keeps burning for those still searching the horizon for hope.